The year is 1999. Y2K is just around the corner. The greatest basketball player of all time just retired early in the year, probably for good. And perhaps the greatest quarterback prospect ever just retired early in the year after leading his Broncos to their second Super Bowl. Lost in all of this is a recently created team in Jacksonville dominating the regular season. They beat the 49ers, the dominant team of the 80s and 90s, 41-3. The Steelers, the dominant team of the 70s, 17-3, and then later 20-6. The Browns, the dominant team of the 40s and 50s, 24-7, and then later 24-14. And then they steamrolled the Dolphins, the last team to ever go undefeated, 62-7, to end Dan Marino's legendary career. The Jaguars were amazing that year. They were unstoppable, or at least they were against any team not named the Tennessee Titans. A division rival of all teams. The Jaguars went 0-2 against the Titans in the regular season, but 14-0 against everyone else. And it was only fitting that the Arena Terror would end against the Titans in the conference championship game. But were the 1999 Jaguars truly that good? Were they a legendary football team that only one NFL team could solve? Or were they a deceptively great squad? This video will be breaking down that fascinating season and will attempt a deep dive into what kind of team they truly were. But first, leave a like and sub, and check out my social media accounts. Anyway, the Jacksonville Jaguars were formed in 1995 as a member of the AFC Central Division, joining the Steelers, the Browns, the Bengals, and the Houston Oilers. The Browns disbanded after 1995 and became the Ravens. A new version of the Browns was formed in 1999, and the Houston Oilers became the Tennessee Oilers in 1997 before becoming the Titans in 1999. In 2002, the AFC Central was disbanded, and the Titans and Jaguars split into a new division called the AFC South, while the rest of the AFC Central joined a new division now known as the AFC North. But we're going too far into the timeline, so let's go back to 1995. The Jaguars, predictably, were bad, going 4-12 with Tom Coughlin as the head coach and Mark Brunell as the quarterback. One plus this season was the drafting of offensive tackle Tony Boselli with a second pick. Boselli did not make the Pro Bowl in his rookie season, but that will be the only time that happens until his final season 6 seasons later. For Tom Coughlin, this was his first season as an NFL coach after 26 years as a college graduate assistant, college head coach, and positional coach or offensive coordinator for multiple NFL teams. For Brunell, this was his first year as a starter, being a backup to Brett Favre on the 1994 Packers before being acquired by the Jaguars in a 1995 draft trade. Initially, he wasn't even supposed to be the quarterback for the Jags. Steve Berline, who the Jaguars took with their first pick of the expansion draft, was supposed to be a starting quarterback. But Steve sprained his MCL early in the season, and Brunell became the primary starter the rest of the way. Another notable player on the 1995 squad was wide receiver Jimmy Smith. Again, it was a predictably bad season, being the first season of an expansion franchise, but the foundation on offense for the 1999 Jaguars was in place as early as that season. 1996 was the improvement. The Jaguars acquired wide receiver Keenan McCardle by free agency, who was a Pro Bowler in the 1996 season. The Jaguars also drafted linebacker Kevin Hardy and defensive end Tony Brackens with their first 2 picks of the draft, setting the foundation for their 1999 defense. As for how the season went, the Jaguars started the season 4-7, but then went undefeated the rest of the regular season before finishing 9-7 with a playoff berth. The likely reason was the mowing the talented Andre Rison, who was acquired in 1996 after 4 Pro Bowl caliber years for Jimmy Smith, which happened during the Rams game midway through the season. Brunell threw for nearly 4,400 yards, the only time he ever threw for over 3,700 yards, but he also had 20 interceptions to 19 touchdowns. McCardle and Smith both had over 1,100 receiving yards. It was a clear upgrade over 1995. But what made 1996 special was the improbable playoff run. The Jaguars started off by upsetting a loaded Bills roster that was about 3 seasons removed from making 4 consecutive Super Bowls. They then upset a loaded Broncos team that went 13-3 and won the 1997-1998 Super Bowls before losing to the 11-5 New England Patriots 6-20. The season was an obvious success for a second-year franchise, but it would only take 2 full seasons before the Jaguars were expected to do more. No one expected anything in their inaugural season, and no one really expected a playoff berth, much less a conference finals trip in their second season. Now it was time to be among the league's best, and the Jaguars responded to those expectations well by going 11-5 in both 1997 and 1998. In 1997, the Jaguars lost in the first round to a loaded Super Bowl winning Broncos squad that probably cheated. In 1998, they won the division for the first time and won their first playoff game, a revenge win against the Patriots, but lost to the Jets in the divisional round 24-34. The Jaguars drafted running back Fred Taylor in the 1998 draft and started the season off 5-0. Heading into the 1999 season, they signed Carnell Lake from the Steelers, who before the signing was a 4-time Pro Bowler, 3-time second-team All-Pro, and a 1-time first-team All-Pro in 1997. The Jaguars entered the 1999 season with a solid quarterback in Brunell and a promising second-year running back in Fred Taylor, who had about 1,600 rushing and receiving yards and 17 combined touchdowns as a rookie. They had one of the best left tackles in the league, Antonio Baselli, and they had 2 Pro Bowl caliber receivers in Jimmy Smith and Keenan McCardle. They also had another elite tackle in Leon Searcy. The offense was packed with talent from all phases, and the defense looked promising with Tony Brackens on the line, Kevin Hardy in the middle, and Carnell Lake in the secondary. All they were truly missing was a true franchise quarterback, but in that era of football, that did not matter as much as a strong foundation on both ends and an elite defense. The pieces were there for both, and the Jaguars were expected to be a contender heading into the 1999 season. And that's what happened. They dominated the 49ers 41-3, then beat the Panthers 22-20, but then in their third game of the season, they lost to a Titans team without McNair 19-20. The Jaguars were up 17-7 with about 12 minutes left in the fourth, but the Titans quickly scored on 2 long field goals, and with about 3 minutes left, scored the game-winning touchdown. The Jaguars ended the game forcing a safety, but the added 2 points wasn't enough to win or send it to overtime. Nonetheless, the Jaguars continued to dominate the rest of the season, beating the Steelers 17-3, the Bengals 41-10, the Falcons 30-7, and were overall on an 11-game winning streak where 4 additional games were won by at least 10 points. The Jaguars were entering the second Titans matchup with a 13-1 record, but the Titans were at home and Steve McNair was back. This game was not close as the Titans started on a 17-0 run and led the half 24-7. Near the end of the third quarter, the Titans led 38-7 before a garbage time 98-yard kickoff return touchdown for the Jaguars and field goal for the Titans made the final score 41-14. Once again, the Jaguars could not figure out the Titans. In their final regular season game, the Jags dominated against the Bengals 24-7 and finished the season 14-2. The offense averaged nearly 25 points per game, and the defense surrendered around 14 points per game. In terms of points per drive, they ranked 7th on offense and 4th on defense. The run game was among the very best in the league, and in that era of defense-minded smash-mouth football, the Jaguars were well positioned to dominate the playoffs. They just had to avoid their kryptonite. In the first round, against a Jimmy Johnson-coached Dolphins squad led by the legendary Dan Marino, the Jaguars obliterated the Dolphins. It was ugly and a horrible way for the legendary quarterback and head coach to go, but the Jaguars looked unstoppable. The hype got to them. They even made a fucking rap video of this game.
Hey, you, what you gon' do? Hey, you, what you gon' do? 49ers, what you gon' do? Ravens, tell me what you gon' do? Jets, what you gon' do? Steelers, what you gon' do? Cowboys, what you gon' do? When the Jags come with you? Falcons, what you gon' do? Browns, what you gon' do? Carolina, what you gon' do? Them Jags coming for you. Yeah, them big Jags, here they come. You better run, Forrest, run. Because they're coming to your town.
You notice how I didn't talk any shit to the Titans? Well, the Titans were next. And if they wanted to finally reach the Super Bowl, they had to vanquish their kryptonite. As they say, third time's the charm. And they were to face the Titans at Jacksonville due to winning more regular season games. Unfortunately for the Jaguars, this matchup was a mixture of both the regular season games. The Jaguars entered the second half up 14-10 and were to receive the ball at the start of the second half, but they could only muster 19 yards before having to punt. And the Titans responded by scoring 21 points on their next 6 drives. Keep in mind, the Titans fumbled on 2 of those drives, and the Jaguars' response to both were a safety against them and a fumble of their own. The Jaguars were extremely sloppy in the second half, scoring 0 points on 9 drives and ending 5 of those drives with either a fumble, a safety, or an interception. It was a pathetic display, and it ended with the Titans dominating 33-14. The Jaguars looked unstoppable against pretty much every team they saw that season, but against the Titans, they couldn't beat a short-handed Titans team at their place and were dismantled by the Titans in both Nashville and Jacksonville. If it makes Jaguars fans feel better, the Titans were 1 yard away from potentially tying or winning the Super Bowl against the Rams. That is more heartbreaking than a seemingly flawless team being incapable of being a division rival in 3 matchups. But it does make one wonder, why exactly did the Jaguars look so dominant against 11 unique teams, but went 0-3 against a team that won less games than them? Well, for starters, neither the Jaguars or Titans had a strong schedule. The AFC Central Division was hella weak outside of them. The Browns, Bengals, and Steelers were the 3 worst teams in the AFC according to SRS, which adjusts for margin of victory and strength of opponent. The only teams that were bad as those 3 were the Falcons, Cardinals, Saints, Giants, Eagles, and the 49ers. Other than the Cardinals, Giants, and Eagles, both the Titans and Jaguars faced those teams and faced the AFC Central once multiple times. And I haven't even mentioned the Ravens, who went 8-8 and had a 0.9 SRS. Not even a full digit. So that's 11 out of 16 games against 6 of the 9 worst teams in the league, and 2 more against an average Ravens squad. For the remaining 5 games, the Jaguars faced the 8-8 Panthers, who had a negative 1.1 SRS, the 8-8 Jets, who had a solid 3.1 SRS, and the 6-10 Broncos, who lost many key players from their 97 and 98 Super Bowl winning squads, but still had a respectable 3.4 SRS. And of course, the 13-3 Titans, the only regular season team they faced all year that had a winning record, and they struggled to beat them. Now, the Jaguars did demolish a 9-7 Dolphins team that had a 1.9 SRS. They showed that they could beat a good team, but you could still tell that they were a weaker team than their record and margin of victory would lead one to believe. After all, they didn't really face anyone, and while that's not their fault, as they didn't choose their schedule, that's still some context that's missing when people talk about this team. But even with that in mind, why did they struggle so much against the Titans? The Titans may have been the only really good squad they faced all season, but they also had a very easy schedule. One difference is that the Titans faced the Rams in the regular season, who dominated with a 13-3 record and by far the best SRS in the league at 11.9. The Titans proved that they could be a dominant squad like the greatest show on turf, which makes the close Super Bowl loss all the more painful. But the Titans also faced the Dolphins in the regular season and an 8-8 Raiders squad that was stronger than their record would lead one to believe. The Titans also struggled to beat the 49ers, lost 0-17 to that Dolphins team, and were demolished by the Ravens 14-41. But overall, they played a tougher slate of opponents and showed that they were more battle-tested against their elite teams than the Jaguars were. There's another reason as well, but that's speculative. Given Greg Williams' reputation, he should probably not give the benefit of the doubt. Regardless, the 1999 Jaguars were an interesting team. They looked like a dominant team, and in an era where a strong line, running game, and defense was the key to win championships, they had the roster to win it all. They just could not get past the Titans, and that is unfortunately part of Jaguars lore. They looked like a dominant team throughout the season, but perhaps it was all a facade, aided by a very easy schedule. The Jaguars never recovered, struggling to muster another winning season until 2004 when Jack Del Rio was the head coach. And 20 years later, the Jaguars have still not made the Super Bowl. Now, if Miles Jack was correctly called as not being down, perhaps they might have reached the Super Bowl, but I doubt they would have won against the Eagles. With the addition of Trevor Lawrence, who was hyped up as a generational quarterback, perhaps the Jaguars will make the promised land soon, but so far, Lawrence has looked more average than generational, and there's just no reason to believe the Jaguars will see another high point like 1999 anytime soon. So I ended at that. Were the 1999 Jaguars truly a great team, or were they a product of a weak schedule? I think they were a very good and balanced team, but I do think the schedule made them look like a juggernaut that they never truly were. What's your take? Cyber out.